Hello there, this is Rom Wills coming back at you with yet another podcast. Crises in Black Sexual Politics Review, Pretty Men and Working Women. Now this was interesting. Now they didn't have a very specific chapter. Well, actually they did have one chapter where they talked about black beauty standards, but it's interesting. That term, pretty men and working women, I saw that early in my reading of Crises in Black Sexual Politics. And now, I first read this book years ago, like early 90s and stuff, so I didn't remember this, right? Now, it's interesting. In the last podcast, I mentioned check the notes. And there was a passage that they quoted in here that they had originally presented. They had originally presented in an article written in USA Today on the editorial in a guest column, and that column went back to 1984. Like I said, if I wanted to find it, I would probably have to go to USA Today. Maybe their website or something. Maybe they might have something there. I just thought about that. And I'm probably, when I get a chance, like check out the original article, right? But one of the things they talked about was the concept of pretty men and working women, right? And this is what they wrote. This is what they wrote in the original guest column. And the articles, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned the authors. The authors were Doctors Nathan and Julia Hare, right? They originally wrote this. Now, this is what they wrote. Let me give a little passage. They said, increasingly, the black woman finds herself affluent without a man to satisfy, while the black man is broke with too many women. Faced with the hardships of traumatized relations, many black women give up the desire to be loved by a man. They fall into a kind of sexual anorexia, which is something they talk about later. Anyway, they fall into a sexual anorexia protesting, I don't need a man. Where have we heard that, y'all? Where have we heard that? Anyway, the black man, frequently unable to provide for his family and thus keep its respect, is impelled too often to flee the family nest, leaving the black woman with the formidable task of being mother and father to her children. Then they wrote, where once there were pretty women and working men, they are now pretty men and working women. And that's deep. That's deep. Now, y'all remember maybe a year or so ago, a little bit over a year ago, I did a video where I was talking about a video by Miss Rebecca Lynn Pope when she talked about unrealistic expectations of many women. She said it was tough she was a professional matchmaker, and it was tough for her to match up black women because they had all these crazy standards. And then also provided a reference to an article on Essence.com where some professional matchmakers, black women, said, black women come in and they more concerned with the man's physical appearance than what he has going on. Like his actual credentials are secondary. And I actually saw that on another professional woman's website. Professional matchmaker's website. Now, so this means this isn't something recent. This isn't something recent. Like that's a very important thing, that physical appearance thing. In fact, if you look at the men, I take an honest look in the black community of the men who get the most attention from women, they always have a certain aesthetic to them. Whether, certain haircuts and stuff. Now, I know there's this thing, some sisters will say, yeah, I just want those chocolate brothers. But if you look at it, it's very much depends on the man's physical features, his skin tone, and his grade of hair. Pretty men, working women. And that's a phenomenon. Like, that's one of the reasons. Now, I'm known, like, to speak out of saying the whole Pookie and Ray Ray thing is overblown. But if we were going to say something that's more in tune with what's actually happening, you would have to say, no, they looking for that pretty dude, right? And usually, and that actually gets into something I'll talk about tomorrow. which is the pimp whore complex in everyday life, and that was an article in Crisis in Black Sexual Politics as well, right? And and it's an interesting dynamic, because that's something we see, but I don't think a lot of times, for whatever reason, people don't talk about it. People don't talk about it, but you can see it. Like you can I use a great example on YouTube itself. YouTube, I've noticed when many women have some criticism of a black male on here, right? When they have a criticism, the criticism is almost never about the substance of what that black male is saying. And it's not like a criticism of the black male's character or the black male YouTuber's character. It's always the criticism is always focused on the physical appearance. Always. And so that's deep. So, you have a situation where there's more of a concern over form than the actual function. And that's actually a big problem in the black community. One of my mentors, Master Yao, who I've mentioned, he mentioned that in one of his videos. In the black community, a major issue is there's a major problem focused on form over function. Now, for the Negro Manosphere, I wrote an article that broke O'Shea's site twice, where I talked about black women creating the men that they want, right? And a lot of times, and really, that was something actually discussed in this book by some academics a few times. The whole thing of black women loving their sons and raising their daughters, right? Because what had been seen by academics, actually, is that you have many women, they prettying up their sons. I mean, I know someone now. I'm seeing pictures of her son on like Instagram and stuff, and I'm like, why is she braiding that long? That kid can't even walk yet. And I took a look, and I thought I was looking at a little girl. She got him all fly. Got his hair braided, all of that stuff. I was like, at first I thought, she was showing a picture of like a cousin or something. Cousin's baby. And I was like, wait a minute, why is she prettying up this child? Why is she prettying up this child? Right? So it happens a lot. Now, it's not the whole group it's not in the whole community, because the black community got several segments. But it is a significant issue, because then you get a bunch of women looking for a certain guy. Now, they mentioned the whole thing with the pretty women, with the pretty men, and and that's an interesting thing. It's almost hard to say that term, pretty men, but they mentioned that a couple times. But then, there's I don't know. There's so many statements, because it was another article they wrote in here. The making of the black male shortage and its implications for the black family, right? Like one of the things with that whole pretty man thing. Now, this is something they said in yet another article in here. They said in the article was the making of the black male shortage and its implications for the black family. Once again, written by Doctors Nathan and Julia Hare, right? And it actually makes an indictment, right? Well, you would have to read the whole thing to get the entire context, right? But one of the couple things they said, though, is like, they said as both mother and father to the boy, the single mother risks unconsciously transmitting feminine ways of coping, which, according to black psychologist Gerald Prather, are likely to be dysfunctional for the male in adult occupational life. And then they went on to write, many unknowingly compound this with an attitude of prideful humor that naughtiness in a boy is admirable, or at least proof of budding manhood. Like, ain't he cute? Look at him. He's going to be a heartbreaker, you know? And it was just like, And that's what we got with a lot of these guys. You know, people talking about the Pookie and Ray Rays, but they need to talk about that dude, you know, a lot of dudes who feel like, well, you know what? If they fly enough or got enough swag, that's all they need. And, you know, as I've seen and I've written about, it happens early. But what are the dudes like doing? Is putting more emphasis on their outer form than, you know, what it really means to be a man that's taking action, or his character, his inner traits. And let me find this other part real quick. Now, another doctor who contributed to this book, Dr. Robert Staples, he wrote an article. It's called Beauty and the Beast, the Role of Physical Attraction in the Black Community. Now, this is more towards how it affects the overall community. And quite frankly, that would take another thing, because a lot of these articles are connected. Because, you know, right now you have some vocal advocates, you know, fighting against with, you know, colorism and also featureism. But as one of the articles in this book pointed out, right, one of the essays pointed out, that's an internalization of white beauty standards. And that's almost another thing. And if it's the man, I'll do another one on it. I wasn't planning to. Because one thing about this book, I could halfway do like a channel on it. And it'd be deep to do a study group on it. Like a study, I might actually do some hangouts on that. Like, it'd be strictly on studying this book. So I'll be the type, you come on there and talking about something totally different, I'll be like, nah. But anyway, right? And like I said, this, in all fairness, this particular article, the one by Dr. Staples, looks at it overall in the community. But, you know, in theme with the subject of this particular podcast, I'll just read something, right? Like, he wrote, Black women demonstrate a stronger preference for a physically attractive man than their white women counterparts, you know. When the Roper organization asked Black and white women what qualities they admire most in a man, twice as many Black women listed sex appeal than did white women. And then in a Jet magazine survey of Black women in Chicago, Black women ranked the 10 things they notice about men in this order: dress, grooming, personality, eyes, mouth, smile, money, physique, thoughtfulness, walk, intelligence, handsomeness, chest, and buttocks. And as they pointed out, only 4 of the desirable attributes are non-physical ones, you know. And, you know, and that's an intro. It's a dynamic, and it was a dynamic scene then. Now, the only thing about now, that dynamic hasn't gone away. If all you had to do is go through many Black neighborhoods and you see some young women with children, most of them are dressing these boys up to be pretty. And, you know, but then, of course, call them no good when they grow up and don't want to do anything. And then you have a significant amount of, if you talk about you add the working woman thing is. Now, overall, Black men make more money. If you take them as a collective, Black men make more money than Black women. As a collective now. But really, that means that the Black men who are making money, they're making a lot of money. And I ain't talking about athletes or something. Some people, I mentioned that before in a podcast, and a woman said, well, it's those athletes. Ain't that many athletes. If you take every single Black athlete, every single Black entertainer, realistically, you're still only dealing with a few thousand. You're still dealing with a few thousand. Most Black men, if they're going to make money, they're doing it because they have professional degrees or very successful businesses or into stuff like real estate. But even with that said, as a collective, but if you in sheer numbers and percentage, you're going to have more Black women overall who are making some money. They're just not making more money than that top thing. And see, you go back to something I mentioned earlier in a quote, you got a lot of black women, yeah, they making that money, getting that house and everything, but they don't have that man. And since they don't have, they don't necessarily need that provider, all of a sudden that good looking dude who with some sex appeal, right, becomes more important to them. So it's something major, and that's the thing. And that happens a lot. See, a lot of people we don't talk about, you got that whole gigolo type of thing going, right? Yeah, that whole gigolo or kept men type of thing, right? So one of the things, and I'm gonna get more into that in the next one, but it's something to think about. And like I said, I would encourage anybody who really want to study it, really want to get into it, get it. Once again, the link is in the description box. So I don't want to keep going. There's one more thing I wanted to discuss from this book. And who knows? Like I say, there are so many things I could easily do a series. And I might get to the point where maybe once a week I'll do something from the book if there's a demand. If there's a demand, if only a few people really care, I was like, look, okay, y'all can go find it. So anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for listening. Peace and blessings.